Hello, everyone. My name is Gustav Wollentz. I'm a senior lecturer at Linnaeus University with a specific focus on critical heritage studies. And I'm very happy to present here today on this exciting conference. So thank you very much for the invitation. I am today going to talk about the value in foresight when activating heritage collections, and I hope it can provide some new perspectives and ideas for you in relating heritage collections also to futures thinking. And I am affiliated to the UNESCO Chair on Heritage Futures. This, however, does not mean that I represent the views of UNESCO, but only of my own, which is important to underline here. So what is UNESCO Chair on Heritage Futures? It was established in 2017. The shareholder is Cornelius Holtorf, but he has a team surrounding him. And it provides tools for creative and critical futures thinking. So the three main questions that we are asking are: which futures are we preserving cultural heritage for? Which cultural heritage will help future generations solve important challenges? And how can we develop futures awareness and futures literacy among cultural heritage workers worldwide? Linking futures thinking with heritage is very much like an emerging topic of research within the field, and it's so most of the publications have been coming within the last 10-15 years or so. However, it is very much gaining momentum, and there's an increased awareness, an increasing awareness that we need to think more about the future within the field of heritage. So it's very much a field that is gaining momentum. And this focus is also gaining momentum, so to speak. So what does futures literacy mean? Yes, it is a learned or otherwise acquired capacity to visualize a variety of possible futures that differ from the present. It is also to master theoretical and practical tools for acting in the present in relationship to these futures. So it is about the capacity to be able to visualize a variety of very different futures that are very different from the present, that differ from the present, and also relate these different futures to actions today. So also very much positioning these futures within present practices and present processes. And by so doing, it creates a more proactive relationship with the future and increases resilience. And it is a capacity that you can train at, you can get better at it, and you can get better at visualizing a multiplicity of different futures and relate them to actions in the present. And that's something that the UNESCO Chair that I'm affiliated to is working on through workshops and training resources and so on. And one of the ways in which you can train futures literacy is for using strategic foresight. And foresight is a systematic and structured way of engaging with the future based on a set of tools, skills, and approaches. And it's very much strategic foresight is very much an established. And there are a lot of resources available out there, open access, that you can use if you want to apply it within your own organization, for example. And they are often open access. For example, the UK government has a very good toolkit that we've been using. And if you are interested, a lot of these resources, or some of these resources, are also listed in the publication that you can see to the left here, where I was working with ICROM within a foresight exercise within the heritage sector, where we were applying the so-called horizon scanning, looking out over a 15-year horizon. But there's still much more to be done in terms of developing resources on strategic foresight that are tailored towards the needs within the heritage sector, the specific needs that the heritage sector is facing. Those resources are still necessary to do. And very importantly, foresight, or futures literacy for that matter, does not predict the future. That is sometimes a misconception. It creates options for the future. It has nothing to do with predictions. It is about our actions today, how it informs our actions today, how a multiplicity of different futures informs our actions today. We, together with ICROM and as part of a larger European project, we also did a review of existing foresight studies within the heritage sector, and also within adjacent fields to the heritage sector. We noticed that there is a lack of diversity in existing foresight approaches when the heritage sector is applying foresight, even though it is still quite uncommon to do it. When it is done, it is seldom looking beyond the heritage sector, and it is most often expert driven, and this is probably also affecting the novelty and diversity in imagined futures. So there is also very much a need of open, collaborative, and co-creative approaches that engages a diversity of stakeholders, including those traditionally excluded from such processes. And here, this very much relates to the theme of the conference of today. Here, there is certainly a need to build cross-sectoral partnerships, also engaging and collaborating with partners outside of the heritage field, and starting these kind of futures forward-thinking processes together, instead of keeping it only within the heritage sector, because this very much also relates to power. Imagining future is also often related to power in different ways. So for example, when an imagined future is being labeled as desirable, it is also always necessary to have this kind of critical perspective and take one step back and ask, by whom and for whom is this future created? Whose needs are being fulfilled by this particular future? Who belongs in this future and who does not belong in this future? What ways of life are made possible and what ways of life are being foreclosed, who are made futureless. So there's also often somehow a very kind of exclusionary mechanisms in in uh, in the kind of future scenarios that we can be faced with, and we also need to be aware of these and reveal them, and strive towards more like open foresight processes that allows for a diversity of different perspectives, because a more like open and participatory and diverse foresight process also creates more diverse and inclusive futures in the end. So that is important. That is also why it is so important to kind of move beyond only the sector of heritage to include other voices, other perspectives, and build future awareness together in a very kind of inclusive and open process, which is also very much related to kind of striving towards a more sustainable future, not a less sustainable future, but a more sustainable future. I think an open process is needed for that. And an open, participatory, and inclusive process is needed for that. I will now focus on three future-oriented values when activating heritage collections. These are values that I think are good to think with, and that I have been um, facing in the different ways through my work with futures thinking and futures literacy, through like my work with ECROM, the strategic foresight work, through my work with the UNESCO Share and Heritage Futures, where we've been interviewing heritage professionals about the future in different ways, and through other and through other projects that I've been engaged in. So these 3 points cannot be traced to a single project, but it's a body of ideas somehow that informs this. And it's collections carry futures, collections reveal the humanity in us, and collections manifest change. And I will explain better what I mean by this very soon. Hopefully, it will provide a little bit of. I hope that it can provide a bit of interesting perspectives when thinking about heritage collections. So collections carry futures. So one thing that has been striking me a lot when engaging with like heritage collections and museum exhibitions is that objects are also carry the potential of unrealized futures. These can be utopias, they can be dystopias, or something more balanced in between. That objects also carry futures. They sometimes point towards the future, and sometimes they even point towards a future that didn't happen, a future that could have happened, a potential future. This, for example, struck me when I was visiting the War Childhood Museum in Sarajevo, which is a very strong museum where about experiencing war as a child, and where stories go alongside objects that meant something for this person when he or she experienced war as a child. So it's also very you get very touched and moved by it, and it's also a very effective way of moving beyond narratives of victim and perpetrator, because in war everyone is a victim. In war every child is a victim, no matter which side it was on. So it was an effective way of moving beyond those dichotomies. But the objects there also spoke to me, because they also really pointed towards potential futures that could have happened if the war did not occur. For example, there is one object that is That is the prom dress, a piece of fabric. There was a prom dress to be worn in the spring of 1992, a dress, the fabric of a dress that was never made. So it's the fabric, and it points to a possible future of this dress being made. And this was in Sarajevo. So when the war happened, this dress was never made. And that's just one example of how an object also points towards a future that could have been possible, an alternative future. Uh, and I think that that is something that is a potential in objects, the way that they orient towards the future, that could be utilized in such larger extent when activating heritage collections, I think, because it also does something in our mind when we think about the future as an alternative, as an option, as something different, what could have been, what could have happened. So the dreams and nightmares of the past that never came to be still persist to haunt us, and these potentials can be sensed as a capacity in objects or collections. And through these unrealized futures, alternatives to the present are provided, opening up perspectives of other possible futures. And I think that in that way, heritage can attempt to redeem these past potentials, that which never came to be. And also, sometimes even hope can be found in what could have been possible, because maybe that is a possibility in the future, a future without war, for example. Maybe that is a possibility in the future. It can point towards the hopeful in some ways. It can make us hopeful for the future, to kind of look at these these past potentials in objects that never came to be. So I think there's a great value in activating heritage collections also in the way that they orient towards other possible futures and think more in that way, possibly. Uh, the second point I would like to bring up is the way that heritage collections also reveal, or collections can also reveal the humanity in us. This is a, as a quotation from the Foresight literature study that we did 2 years ago. In an increasingly digital future, heritage can provide valuable insights concerning what it means to be human and help inform the development of more ethical artificial intelligence and or improve resilience to its adverse effects. So in an increasingly digital future, these perspectives on what it means to be human, what it means to be human in all of us is increasingly important, I think. So and also the heritage collections can play such an important role in that. One inspiring example that I come across is the Museum of Innocence in Istanbul by the Nobel Prize winner Orhan Pamuk, who created this museum and telling a story of two characters, only using objects from Istanbul that he come across in different ways. And it tells a specific story of Istanbul during a specific time period, but it also tells a very human story through the objects. For example, there's one wall just simply full of smoked cigarette butts, and it tells the story of the love relationship between this man who was in love with this woman who smoked all these cigarettes, and it's and even though these characters are fictional, they never existed. By going through this museum and seeing all these objects, they become very, very real and very, very human. And I think it is through the way that the story is being told, through these kind of everyday objects, through the cigarettes that some people smoke, the smoked cigarettes. It tells a story of the human. And I think Orhan Pamuk also states this very well when he writes, the measure of a museum's success should not be its ability to represent a state, a nation, or a company, or a particular history. It should be its capacity to reveal the humanity of individuals. And I think for sure the heritage collections has a great role to play there. But maybe not always the most spectacular objects, but also the very small objects, the discarded object, what we throw away. And also the last point, heritage to cope with challenge, with change and loss. So heritage conservation's operations may increasingly shift towards managing and helping communities coming to terms with heritage loss. Inclusive, transparent, and sustainable processes for this will be needed. This is very much of relevance in the context of climate crisis, of wars. Heritage loss is going to be part of the future, and this is something that we have to cope with in different ways, and also in some ways learn from. So what can heritage collections tell us about letting go and of accepting change? And aren't these stories of loss and accepting change precisely the kind of stories that reveal the humanity in us? Because heritage collections make visible and is in itself a manifestation of change over time. They show how humans have adapted to and learned to live with loss linked to, among other things, climate disasters or war, and how its consequences can continue to develop over incredible time spans. So in this role, cultural heritage can increase resilience, which means a better ability to handle and overcome crisis and loss in our own lives. And the climate crisis, the environmental pollution, and wars means that this ability will become increasingly important in the future. So how objects also tell stories of overcoming crisis, overcoming loss, overcoming change, and moving on. I see a great value in them. I think also to learn how to deal with it in our own lives. I think Museum of Broken Relationships is a good example of that. A museum that focuses on telling stories of objects related to heartbreak and how people overcome moving forward from a relationship that broke up or never was successful. An unusual story, maybe we hear more about the love stories, but also the love that didn't succeed and how we move forward with that through stories of objects, I think is also important, also significant in terms of coping with change, coping with loss. And I think that the Museum of Broken Relationship takes a quite innovative approach in that way, also telling the stories through objects, through the objects we dealt with in that situation. So yeah, as a summary here, heritage collections can be activated to address several crucial societal issues for building a more sustainable future. I have made a few points here, but many more can be made. This does not mean that they will always fulfill their potential for sustainable development. Instead, it depends entirely on how we activate them today. Foresight is a way of engaging with the future that can make us think differently about the value in our collections for the future, informing our practices today. However, foresight is still not widely known or used within the heritage sector, and when it is used, it is most often not moving beyond the sector and also an expert-driven process. More cross-sectoral and participatory foresight is needed, and this will also create more options for the future, since a more diverse and inclusive foresight process will also likely generate a larger array of possible futures beyond status quo or the already expected. I was very happy to present here today, and I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have about the presentation. Thank you very much.